Let's talk about intellectual capital. There are a couple of things we're going to seek to understand. Firstly, understanding what intellectual capital actually is, and then secondly, why it's important. So you've probably heard the term intellectual property, so let's start with that. Wikipedia defines intellectual property as a category of property that includes intangible creations of the human intellect. It's the sort of knowledge, ideas, innovation, and approaches that we use patents to protect. It can also include secrets, trademarks, and things to which an originator has publicity rights, for example, literature and music. In general, it's a concept or non-physical entity which has been created and has some form of uniqueness to it. What then is intellectual capital? Well, intellectual capital is a broader concept than intellectual property. It's the things that may not be unique or patentable, but which a company or organization possesses. It is in essence the intangible value of the business. Intellectual capital includes three main types of intangible assets. There's human capital, relational capital, and structural capital. So let's have a look at each one in turn. Human capital is value that is derived from all the employees of a business. It includes the skills or abilities of the people that form that business, as well as their expertise and the knowledge that they possess. The real value in human capital is derived from how those people then use their skills, expertise, and knowledge to solve problems and to actively use the intellectual property that we were talking about earlier. So essentially, human capital is about the value that people can deliver within an organization. Relational capital is the intangible relationships that a company or organization has. A lot of strength and support can be gained from the relationships that a company maintains, and this is why many companies focus so heavily on customer service. However, relational capital, as well as including customer relationships, also looks at further relationships with suppliers, for example, or partnerships that have been formed with third parties, be they customers, suppliers, industrial bodies, government agencies, or indeed any other organization or group. Relational capital can also include less direct relationships, such as licenses for products, services, or indeed trademarks as they relate to customers, so jointly held trademarks. All of these relationships have value, and thus the relational capital is the amount of value a company or organization has in the relationships that it maintains. The last area of intellectual capital is the idea of structural capital. Whilst this might sound like it should be buildings or tools, it's actually non-physical assets, just like the other two areas. In structural capital, we see things like databases of information, processes and procedures that help perform tasks efficiently. This is also where all the trademarks and patents sit, effectively repeatable and protected knowledge in the form of concepts, designs, products, and inventions. But the patent or trademark itself is an intellectual asset. The right to that thing or idea is what makes patents valuable. Similarly, a company's brand or an organization's brand is a key part of their structural capital, the recognition that that brings. The actual organization itself can be a structural asset, how effectively the organization is arranged and its ability to respond. And indeed, whilst it may not be patentable, any area of unique knowledge, such as those trade secrets we mentioned earlier, is another structural asset. So what is the importance of intellectual capital? Whilst perhaps the most valuable assets are the intellectual property that we first covered, unless you understand your intellectual property and can use it effectively, you won't be competitive. It is the elements of the wider intellectual capital in an organization that enable it to be more competitive in its chosen marketplace. Being more competitive and having well-educated, knowledgeable employees with effective processes and dependable relationships mean that it is possible to both be more effective and more efficient. This in turn is increasing the profitability of an organization, so intellectual capital has a direct impact on the bottom line. And these things then in turn combine to deliver better quality results to customers and indeed to the market. That in turn increases customer satisfaction, which again will then feed into generating more business, which will make more intellectual capital and further value for the organization. So as you can see, intellectual capital is a highly valuable element of business and something that should be actively managed, nurtured, and developed within a company.